Hello, this is Nicole. Welcome to my first video. The idea for this project is to craft an old wooden door with a window and a rusty old handle, a lock and everything on the cover of a sketchbook. This is something I have never done before, either the video nor the customized sketchbook. So, wish me luck and let's get started. First of all, I bought a sketchbook with a hard cover. Since I'm going to create everything on the existing cover, I prefer to have a hard and stable base. I drew and cut out the opening for the window and then I started taking my measurements for the door. I am using balsa wood for this, and it's the first time I am working with this material. It was a little expensive, but I found out that it's so easy to work with, cut it or carve it, that it's ideal for crafting. At the beginning I thought that balsa wood is some kind of pulp wood or something like that, but then I did a little research and found out that it actually comes from a tree. It has wood grains and everything, so even though it is light and feels like cardboard, it is actually real wood, and it looks like it. Back to the crafting. Using a cutter, I started cutting the planks. It's going to be a rustic door. So naturally, it must be made out of old wooden planks. Of course, I needed to texture the wood in order to make it look aged and frayed, as an old wooden plank should be, and not like a brand new crafting material. So I started cutting here and there, creating a lot of cracks and removing small pieces of wood. I was having several thoughts about what type of glue should I use to glue my planks on the cover. Of course I thought of wood glue or hot silicone, but I didn't feel quite safe. I know that this is going to be an object that will be in use, and therefore I needed a really strong glue. So I went with cold silicone glue, and hopefully everything will stay where I put it. "24 hours later, the silicone glue was cured and I could continue with some sanding. Sanding, sanding, more sanding and more sanding. But it was worth it because at the end of this process I was very happy with the result. After that, I used acrylics to paint both the front and the back cover brown color. The door is going to be blue at the end, but I thought having a first brownish layer would add some depth to it. After I painted everything brown, I continued with my blue color. I tried to use my brush as lightly as I could in order to have both colors visible, and I was quite satisfied at the beginning, but at the end of the process I realized that the blue was too light for my taste, so I added a small amount of black color in my paint and went on again. Third time was a success. After that, I gave it a black wash, which is actually just few drops of black paint in a lot of water, sprayed and dried off with a napkin. That way the color goes into the cracks and creates a more three-dimensional look. To finish off, I applied a deep brown color very softly using mostly a paper napkin, just here and there, to make the whole thing look aged. I am using the lid of a plastic food container to create the glass of my window. I don't really like taking measurements, so I just placed the lid on the window, made some marks, and then made the needed adjustments. I glued it at the back of my cover with super glue, and now we have a glass on our window. Next thing, the window frame. I was searching on Pinterest for inspiration and I stumbled across this door which really caught my eye. So I'm using this one as a reference to create my window frame. I am placing some air dry clay on a small part of an elaborate mold. The idea is to make 8 similar small elements, which combined will form the frame of the window. After they dried off, I did a little sanding on each of them to smooth the edges and highlighted the details.
Blimey, there you go again.
I painted them using a metallic bright color mixed with some drops of regular black acrylic to get the dark shade that I wanted. Some black wash to add depth. And then dry brushing with my original copper color to make the details pop up. Back to the window glass. I intended to place an LED behind that window, but of course I don't want it to be visible through a clear piece of plastic, so I am doing an experiment.
I'm conducting a series of experiments.
Applying a thick layer of wood glue, and I think the outcome looks really cool. I texture the glue layer using an old brush and let it dry. Using again my cold silicone, I glued all the pieces of the frame around my window and voila! I made a shade of dark brown using some pastels and I painted my window glass here and there to make it look blurry and dirty. I sprayed my pastels with a layer of Mr. Super Clear and I dried them off with this tiny hair dryer which was totally unnecessary, but it's so cute. Then it was time for my window bars, which was funny because I didn't have any wire at the proper thickness and I was thinking, how the hell am I going to show up to a store and ask to buy only 5 inches of wire? Then I realized that I could actually cut it out of my yard fence, which I did, and here are my window bars. I drilled 4 holes, one on each side of the window, and I stuck my pieces of wire in along with a tiny drop of glue just to make sure that they will stay in place. After that, my window was finally done. Moving on to the handle and the keyhole. I used again air dry clay to make the handle base. I tried to make an elaborate design so it will match the window frame, and I think it turned out quite nice. In some leftovers from a previous project, I found a tiny metallic semicircle which I attached to the clay for the handle to hang. Good thing I am keeping all my scraps. I remembered, oops, wrong box. I bought a tiny key last winter. So I'm going to my little treasure box, found my tiny key, pressed it to a small piece of clay and created my keyhole. I cut the head out of 4 pins, and I remembered this time to keep the pins in my hand so they won't fly away all over my room, and attach them to the handle base so they look like nails. To create the classic round shape of old handles, I used a piece of copper wire which I rounded up using the lid of a small bottle because it was the first thing that I saw in front of me. I wrapped a thinner piece of wire around it to create some texture and finish it up with a small plastic bead. Because I intended to paint everything, even the metal, with the same metallic paint I used on the window frame, I applied a coat of Mod Podge for the color to stick on the surface. I painted the base, the handle, the keyhole, and while they were drying up, I added a protective layer of Mod Podge on everything else. Now let's go inside the book. I wanted to have light in the window, so I carved through the first pages the compartments for all my lighting accessories. And I wired my LED with the switch and the battery. Time for the test, and there shall be light. So happy with that. I made sure my switch will stay put by using hot silicone. I covered everything up by using the image of a magic forest on which I created a small lid so I can reach my battery. Now for the last part of the project. I wanted to create some vines to place on the door. This, after all, is a magic portal that leads to a mystical place. It feels right to be hidden behind trees and covered with plants. I am using a rope which I am untangling as much as possible to create the structure of my vines. That I didn't enjoy. And maybe I made a lot. I am not going to use all this, but it's okay. I can save them for future projects. To make sure that they will keep their shape, I mixed wood glue with water, sprayed them a few times and let them dry. For the trees, I dived into my wood stash and came up with some options. Maybe this.
Nope.
This one.
Nope.
The other side.
Nope.
What about this? Place that on top. Cool. I didn't want to just glue them to the door because I wasn't sure at all that they will stay there. So I decided to pin them down using my beloved sewing pins. I made a hole on each of them and placed a pin through the hole. And at this point the rest of my pin went flying across my room. Of course. I pinned them on the balsa wood using also some cold silicone for extra stability. For the vegetation, I searched on my little hoard of artificial plants and decided to use a spider web looking green stuff.
What?
I combined it with my untangled rope and created my vines. And at this point my phone died, so the attachment of the vines on the door was made off camera. I continued by adding small bouquets of untangled rope to create the floor vegetation, and I added some splashes of color using tiny pieces of red yarn. I continued with the back cover of the book by adding artificial moss, some more vines and ground level plants which I glued with Mod Podge. When I finished, I noticed that the moss and the vines were the same green shade, which I found a little bit boring, so I added a few tones of darker green using acrylics to create depth and make it more interesting. As a final step, I secured everything by spraying several layers of water-red Mod Podge, and the sketchbook was complete. What do you think of my little enchanted book? If you were finding a door like this, would you open it? And where would it lead? I would love to know, so maybe you can tell me in the comments. Thank you for watching and wish you great crafting adventures. See you on my next video.